Thanks a lot, Marion. Yes, first of all, I would like to thank you, Edouard, everyone on the staff of Android Makers. It's really cool to be able to speak, even if I'm not there. I put the background of the fall of Montrouge, but of course, this is fake. I'm not there at all. I wish I could. This sucks. I wish I could be there with you, looking at you directly. I can see there's some people there, so there's some kind of interaction, or we could say it like that. But yeah, so thanks a lot for the staff for making this happen. So let's start. Let me just check if this is working. Yes. So yeah, I'm going to talk about adding a Flutter module to an existing app. So an existing native app. Real quickly, so I'm Elaine. I'm based in Paris, in France. So this is even more sadder, I don't know how to say in English, that I'm not there, but well, some life events happened, so I couldn't be there. I work at SFEIR. SFEIR, it's an agency based in France, Luxembourg, and in Belgium. And I'm a team leader. I work with mobile projects, either native or Flutter. You can follow me and ask me questions and contact me on all of the networks, Twitter, email. You can look for me on LinkedIn. I'm also a GDE. I'm a Google Developer Expert for Flutter Dart and Google Assistant. And if you're based in France, and if you're looking for a job, if you're a mobile developer, either native or Flutter or both, contact me on either social network because we're looking for developers. And this talk is based on some project that I did for a client with SFEIR. So if this kind of project interests you, please don't hesitate to contact me. So let's go to the outline. First of all, I'm going to explain not the theory, but the history of the Add to App feature, how the Flutter team introduced this feature to the framework. And I think it's important too, because I'm going to explain how I did it, we did the integration on the project. So it's really important to know where we were coming from as a team, because I think this is a great feature that works for a lot of teams, but maybe not all of the teams, and all of the impacts, that is the other part that I'm going to talk about, it's going to be specific for our team. And of course, I'm going to talk about how it works, about the module's responsibilities, also the human factor impact, because I'm going to talk about later. This is not, you should not skip that at all. Thinking about people that, especially coming from a team that is working with native development, it's definitely you should definitely not skip the human factor. If people are not motivated, they will not adopt Flutter. But also don't forget the other people on the team too, the product owner, the QAs, the design, the UX, etc. And then I'm going to conclude with a few words. So first of all, of course, this is not an exhaustive list of strategies, of ways of doing mobile app development in 2022. But I think it shows the main ways. If you're building an app from scratch, as we say, a greenfield mobile app development, there's a high chance that you're using either of those technologies. So either you're building a new app, or you had an existing app with legacy code, with technologies that you don't want to use anymore. So you're going to abandon this and build a new app. So the top ones, of course, everyone here knows, is native development. That works really well. Android SDK with Kotlin, iOS with Swift. Flutter. When we talk about cross-platform frameworks, there are today two main solutions. Sorry, Flutter with Dart, the programming language to build Flutter apps. React Native with either JavaScript or TypeScript. Those ones on the top, they are targeting native packages that are going to exist on the store. But we cannot forget also the browser. If you want to target a telephone, a smartphone, everyone has a browser, so we cannot forget web apps. And if you're doing web apps, there's a high chance that if you're building modern web apps, you're going to use PWA's progressive web apps. So this is for greenfield. But in the case of existing apps, so brownfield mobile development, there are some other strategies that we can look at. Either you have an existing app that is built, native app that is built with Java and Objective-C for Android and iOS. And a lot of teams that want to adopt Kotlin or Swift, they can migrate from these technologies to the new ones progressively. This is really good for both of them. Of course, there's some, it's not perfect, but it works. You can have projects that can have both of, they can have Java and Kotlin at the same time, that can have Objective-C and Swift at the same time. So a lot of teams have done that. So we can work with modern programming languages as Kotlin and Swift. Another case, so this is the first case. Another case is that you have already, so Kotlin and Swift, they have been the main choices for native mobile development for a few years. So there's a high chance that if you're entering a new team, the project already started with either Kotlin or Swift. So you're just going to keep doing your work using those technologies. But I would like to say maybe since 2 years, there have been two main alternatives to the very high used solutions that are the native solutions, which is cross-platform development. I have been really skeptical about cross-platform development since ever. I've been doing Android development since, I don't know, maybe 8 years or more. And I was really, really, really skeptical about all of them. And when I first heard about Flutter, I was really skeptical too. But when I learned how it worked, I was really interested in it, and I really believe it's a really great solution. So you can do full Flutter's apps, of course, but what's really interesting is that you can do a module that can integrate on your existing apps native with, it doesn't matter which technology, Java or Kotlin, but it's a really, really great alternative to be able to integrate just one screen, maybe one flow of your app. You can do it using Flutter. And of course, we have also the possibility to do KMM, to build a shared library between iOS and Android. So KMM is targeting only a library that is handling the business code. So no UI, but it's a really great way to share some code in your existing project. I have some convictions about mobile development, especially this year, since 2021, 2022, is that for me, almost every project can have some kind of code that is shared. And today we have these two great solutions that are a Flutter Add to App, Flutter module, or KMM to share some of the code. So this is, I really believe in this. And what I'm going to talk about, of course, is this. We have an existing app at my client. We have an existing app using Kotlin and Swift native, and we added a Flutter module. So this is what I'm going to talk about today. Really quickly, some generalities about Flutter for those here who don't know how the framework is built on a very high level. What is really interesting for me is that all the framework itself is shared for a lot of targets. When we think about Flutter today, a lot of people think it's only targeting iOS and Android. Maybe some people know that it works for the web too, but the main purpose of Flutter is to build beautiful apps in every kind of device. Doesn't matter if it's small, it's big. It's really the purpose is targeting every device and making beautiful UI work. And the way that it's built, it is so that, as I said, that the framework is shared between all of the targets. The engine that is the lower level engine that is written in C++ is shared between all of the targets for all of the targets except the web, because the web we're not targeting the hardware, we're targeting the browser. So of course the engine is going to be a different one that is going to compile to JavaScript. So this is why the web has some it's a little bit different. But in theory, what's really interesting here too, if you look at the top level, your Flutter app that is written in Dart, the programming language that is used to build Flutter apps, in theory, it can be 100% the same for all of those targets. And real apps have, of course, they have some specifics, and especially when you're targeting desktop, Windows, Linux, or the web, the input is not going to be the same. You're going to have a mouse, you're going to have a keyboard, so it's not at all the same. So you're going to have maybe some specific code. And if you're writing even if you're writing only for mobile, maybe you're going to do some specific code for iOS or for Android that's going to really for example, using a view that is not at all respecting the iOS guidelines. You can do specific code, but in theory, you could write 100% of your app in a project that is shared between all of your targets. And what's really different for me and really interesting for what really made me love Flutter is that the app that is compiled, it is optimized for the hardware. It's optimized for the hardware, and it's targeting really the low-level stuff, the GPU, the CPU, and this is what it makes it work really well for every target. So this is only some references that we have today. Maybe you heard about some of them. BMW here in Europe, BMW, Philips, that rewrote all of the apps that are using Flutter, Toyota that is using inside the car system. Some of partnerships, Huawei, Microsoft, and Amazon, they have made packages that work with their services. So they are officially supporting their services for Flutter. Another really cool reference to is Ubuntu, that has the installer of Ubuntu is written in Flutter, so it's really nice. And the Canonical, the editor of Ubuntu, they have said that Flutter is the recommended way to make Linux apps targeting Ubuntu. And Alibaba and eBay, they did modules, as I'm going to say today. And in France, I didn't put here the app is struggling with the with the reputation right now, but we have also SNCF that has reworked their app to there is 100% Flutter today. But it's getting better. So I think in the long term, it would be a great reference for a Flutter app. So I talked about the strategy inside a project. So sharing a module between an existing project. So a module that is targeting Android and iOS. But I just want to take one moment to talk about when Flutter development as a whole. If you're starting a Flutter project, you have three ways of building your project. The first one is that maybe your project it's kind of small, and all of the packages are out there that have to handle the specific code. So you're really lucky because your project is going to be 100% Flutter, 100% Dart, and it's going to target Android and iOS at the same time. You're not going to need to look at the native side of Flutter. Because what I didn't explain to you is that for those of you who don't know how a Flutter a project looks like, you have your main code that is written in Dart, but you also have at all time an Android Studio project that that has a manifest, that has a main activity that you can customize to your needs. The same for iOS. You have at all times an Xcode project that can be customized. So this is the second strategy, is that you have your app that is written in Flutter, but you have some specific code that is not handled yet by packages that exist already. And you can actually go to the Android side of things, go open your project on Android Studio as you do every day as an Android developer, and write Kotlin code to do some kind of specific code for Android, if you need to. This here, the second option, is used when you have maybe some SDK that is supporting Android natively, iOS natively, and you have to make this bridge. You have to integrate the SDK on the Android part and make a bridge to connect it with the Flutter part. And it works really well, and it's totally fine to use it. And of course, the last option is it's when you have an existing app, Android, iOS, and you have this shared module. So how we got here with the Add to App feature. So the Add to App feature, it was really something that the Flutter team worked on very early, because the first time that I heard about Add to App is when Flutter was not yet stable. It was when Flutter was still in beta in 2018. So this feature was really highly demanded, and a lot of people were trying a lot of things with this and were happy with this already and trying out some stuff. And it went almost 2 years in preview. And then with the release of Flutter 1.12, they released it in stable. And then I thought, oh, maybe I have to think about some kind of feature that we can add to the app. So I did a first POC. It went well, but it was not the right timing. And then 1 year ago, almost more than 1 year ago, there was the right feature that was perfect for this. And then I did a really, really quick demo for the team, and everyone was convinced that it was the right technology for this feature. And then we did it, and we published on the store, and it's been working great for us. So what does our team look like? We have, at the time, we had five Android developers for iOS and a tech lead. I will let you guess who I am in this team. So this app is, it's kind of big for France. It has more than 1 million, even 2 million, I think, monthly active users. It has a bunch of screens. It has maybe more than 50. So I consider it as a mid-large app and code base. But what's really important for us is that we have only one module in the app, and we don't have any fancy processes. We don't have internal SDKs and stuff like that. So this was really a first for us. And so you have to keep that in mind too, when I'm going to talk about. So finally, how does it work? What are the technical impacts of adding a module in your app? So the first thing that you have to do, of course, you have to create it. You have to create the module. You can create with the IDE, but I think it's really interesting to see how it works with the command line. Flutter has a great CLI. And you create a module as you create a Flutter project with this flag module. It is the only difference. And the other options are you can put, but it is the only thing that you have to do is that you have to add this flag. What this does, it creates, of course, the project. And the main difference between a module and a Flutter project that is being a module or a Flutter project as a whole is that the native part of the module are going to be generated each time, and you don't have to, they're not supposed to be on your Git, and you should not use this because, as I said, you can customize the native part of a regular Flutter project, but this doesn't make sense for a module because a module lives inside a native project. So all of your code should be in the lib folder, which contains the Dart code, the Flutter code, and the generated native folders should not be touched at all. So in order to integrate, so you create the module, you do what you have to do, you develop it, and when you want to integrate it in your native app, you have two options. The first option is that you compile the library and you integrate it to your current project. So you have the Flutter module for Android. You do this on this command here on the command line, Flutter build AAR. And what's really cool for Android is that the output of this command, it's going to be a Maven repository. So you can host it either locally, you can put it on an Nexus, on whatever you have in your team. And you, in order to use it in your project, you do it as you do for any other dependency. So really great for Android. For iOS, it's a little bit different because you have, at the end, this is the output of this command line here. You have iOS frameworks. You can take a step further and build CocoaPod or other iOS ways of building libraries. But this is you have to do this manually. Flutter doesn't do that for us. So maybe a little bit harder for the iOS folks. So this was the first option. The second option is to depend directly on the source. This is great when you're developing because you're going to basically make a link between your native project and your Flutter module, and you're going to call your Flutter view inside your Android project, and you're going to maybe make a little adjustment on the Flutter module, and you don't have to compile here because this takes time, and you're going to be able to do it more quickly. But the downside is that if you do it like this, of course, you need the Flutter SDK on your machine. And if you only do this, all of the developers are going to need the Flutter SDK with a good version in order to compile the project at runtime to integrate it to your Android or iOS project. And another downside too is that Flutter has 3 build types: debug, profile, and release. And there's some automatic mapping between Flutter build types and your Android build types. This is what I'm talking about here. So I'm not going to explain exactly what they are, but what you have to know is that the debug build type for Flutter is targeting the development way of the development phase of your project. And then you have the release build type that is targeting the app that is going to the store, that is going to be optimized. And you have the profile, which is using ahead of time compilation with some flags, some debug flags that are turned on. And I didn't say for debug, JIT compilation, it's a just-in-time compilation. And the downside, if you do that, is that when you are integrating your Flutter module in your Android project, this is the code that is doing the mapping of the build types. So if your Android build type, it's called profile, is going to use the Flutter profile build type. If the flag debuggable is on, it's going to use the debug Flutter build type, otherwise release. And I don't know about you, but all of my team's build types are debuggable except the release. So the ones that we deliver to the QA are going to use debug, which is not good because it's not optimized at all. So this is really a downside if you're doing this strategy right here. Another thing that you have to think about is the responsibilities of the main app and the module. We made some choices here. This was the first time that we are going to use this module. So we wanted to focus on Flutter's main strength, which is UI rendering. So we didn't want to do a business code at all, no API calls, no local storage, and we wanted to, use native current components if you could. So this is what we had in mind. So in order to do so, there was a lot of communication needed between the native code and the Flutter code. And since the Flutter module was only displaying screens, and this can be done really nicely with something that is called method channels, which are those channels that can go back and further from native to Flutter. But what you have to keep in mind is that they run on the main thread. So don't stream data on those channels right here. Otherwise, they work really great. So this is how they work. I'm not going to enter into the details. But here, the Flutter part, it's asking for the battery level. The battery level is something that is, of course, coming from the native part, either Android and iOS. So this is how it works. You just declare this method channel here with some IDs and some method IDs too. And then it's going to invoke this function right here. And inside you have the native code that you know. You send back the results, and then you can do whatever you want with that on the Flutter side. Here we're only printing, but of course, in general, we're doing some more interesting stuff, and the same for iOS. In our development process, we had two main ways of coding with Flutter. We were either implementing method channels. So in order to debug it, to see if the right data was being sent back and forth, what's really cool is you can attach to the Flutter process and debug, put some breakpoints and debug, or you can always print. Of course, for method channels, it's only data that is coming back and forth. Printing always works. And another great part of our development process is that we were implementing the UI. And when we were implementing the UI, we didn't need to to run the whole project. We could run only the Flutter module as a Flutter project. But the downside for us is that the Flutter module is dumb. It doesn't have any data. So we worked on this, we call this standalone mode. So instead of calling the method channels that is giving the data to the module, we were relying on local JSON files, and it worked really well. And we could take advantage of hot reload for Flutter, which made the development process really, really quick. Our team, as you saw in the beginning, they are native developers. So in order to be able to do Flutter programming in an optimized way, there are two key concepts that I think you have to master when you're coming from native. The first one is declarative programming and state management. This one, I think people that already are using Jetpack Compose on Android, this is something that is going to be familiar to you, because it's the same way of thinking about the UI, is doing declarative programming. So this is, if you're doing Jetpack Compose, basically you know how to do Flutter. Another one I think it's really important too is that we are really lucky with Flutter. The components library, the widgets library, it's really extensive, and a lot of widgets are really well done and do a lot of heavy load for us, and they work really well. So it's really important to know them, to take a look at what exists, so you don't reinvent the wheel. And of course, one impact is build times. So of course, it's going to be slower to build your project, but this was acceptable for us. Plus 8% if you build from source, and plus 2% if you integrated directly the AAR. So this was the impact for developers. What about the other people on the team? It's really, really important to take this into account, because of course we can talk about technology all day long and be passionate about stuff, but you have your product owners, your QAs, your designers that are going to be impacted too. And this slide, I show what we had before. Before, we had your Jira or Trello tickets with your feature X for Android, the feature X for iOS, really clear, each one progressing as they should, developing, in testing, etc. Depends on your workflow. And when you're adding a module, the feature X is a module doesn't, of course, it doesn't work by itself. It is integrated inside the native. So a module has the Flutter part, but of course, it's integrated inside the native part. And for us, since we relied a lot on the native part, it was really a mix of the feature was really, really split between Flutter code and native code. So when the QA was testing and they found out there was a bug, maybe they don't know if it's coming from the native part or the Flutter part. We figured it out, but please keep in mind that this kind of issues. Other impacts that you can have too is your user. Maybe, of course, this is not the case, but I just wanted to make sure. Maybe the module is going to make the app slower for any reason. So I did a lot of profiling. So basically, I'm going to just summarize that, saying that everything was okay for the app size. Of course, the app size too can be impacted. The usage of RAM, CPU, everything was okay for us. The app size was okay because our module was kind of small. If your module is bigger, and if you're building still APKs, which unfortunately is still our case, we're building APKs, we're not building AABs, we have to do so, of course. The impact is going to be really higher, because Flutter builds a native library. So it builds .so, so native libraries that are targeting specific architectures. This is, again, one of the biggest strengths of Flutter, is targeting the real native low-level stuff. But the impact is that you have the library specifically for each architecture. So please build AABs. Another impact too that can affect your users and your designers is, of course, the design. And what you have to know in Flutter is that there are two main UI libraries. Material, which is implementing material design, and Cupertino, which is implementing the iOS guidelines. In general, what we do is that we do material, which is a more rich library. And if you have really specific widgets that should look like iOS widgets, we can use Cupertino. This is for the UI. And for the UX too, we have a lot of behaviors that are specific to either Android and iOS. And most, if not all, of native behaviors, they are handled automatically. You don't have to do anything. Here you have an example of the overscroll effect on Android and on iOS. So it's handled automatically by Flutter. And for us, 100% of the code is shared. We are kind of lucky because all of the widgets that we used were not platform specific, so everything could be shared. But if we needed specific widgets, we could do so with specific widgets specifically for iOS, for example. So let's conclude real quickly. So this you see that this was a small project for us. This was a small module. Even if this is a small project that could be done really quickly. The first POC that I think I did it in 1 day or 2 days. Of course, I had one big file that had every part of the code because I just wanted to show to the team that it worked really well. But when we advance further, of course, I organized the project in a way that it could be well maintained. So keep in mind, even if it's a small project or a small module, it should be considered as a regular Flutter app. So you should write tests, you should organize it well, you should work on your naming conventions, you should really take that stuff seriously. We had some nice surprises that we weren't expecting. Is that mixing Flutter and native, it worked really well. And we could use components that already existed and they integrated really well with Flutter. Here on blue, you have the Flutter view. On purple, you have the native. So this is one interaction that we had. We clicked on an element and we could use this quick view here that is coming from the native. It worked really well. And then if you swiped all the way up, you had a transition that worked really smoothly. And then another case is that when we clicked on a cell here, we had a dialog, and Android dialog that existed that showed some data. And then you could do some actions here to change some data, and the data synchronized really well between all of the views. This worked really, really well. So will the team be using it for upcoming features? So first of all, we definitely underestimated two things: the amount of communication between the app and the module. We saw some stuff beforehand, but we saw, oh, and then there's this, oh, and then there's that. We spent a lot of time thinking about that, but we still forgot stuff. So there was a lot of communication going back and forth. Also, the initial cost of setting up everything, because again, we don't have any fancy processes on the team. We don't have in-house SDKs, so we had to set up everything in order to integrate it. But of course, this is a cost that you're going to pay only one time. The feedback is mostly positive. I'm really, really convinced that Flutter is the best framework to do UI development. Of course, some developers don't agree. And we'll evaluate it if you use it some other feature and make the module smarter doing API calls. And of course, Flutter does a mobile, but also you can target the web. So we can think about doing some web stuff too. It works well with, it builds a PWA, so building PWAs, not this module that you have, maybe even this module could be a PWA that could be published on the web. So this is really interesting too, the fact that Flutter targets also the Flutter has other targets such as the web. And you can also do app clips and instant apps with Flutter, which is great. So some things were expected because I have worked with a lot of native developers that learn Flutter. So so coming from zero knowledge of Flutter, they could learn it really quickly and build a screen that is easy or medium complexity, and they could do it really, really rapidly. So this is what I expected. This is what I have seen in a lot of teams. And the thing that I was talking about in the beginning, don't neglect reluctance to change, especially if you're working with senior developers that really, really, really love their framework. I love Android. I think it's a beautiful SDK. I understand it. Also, the iOS developers in general, they're really passionate about even the telephone, not only the developer tools, but about the whole ecosystem in general. iOS developers are passionate about the Apple ecosystem in general. So don't neglect the reluctance to change in this part. And final word is that we're really lucky with Flutter that we can do real nice experiences in very little effort, in very little time. So don't hesitate. Be aware of what's going on your team. If you think about, you're going to maybe do one screen and redo one screen in your app, consider it Flutter. I think it's a really great technology, even if you're passionate about Android. I'm still passionate about Android too, but I think Flutter is great too. And we learned a lot with this experience, and I think every team can learn a lot. So be aware, try it out, and just leap in and try new stuff. This is really interesting, and I think everyone should do it. So this is what I had to share with you today. I think I talked too much, but I don't know if I have time. Sorry for questions, but I'm here if you have any questions.